evening. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website and podcast and our YouTube channel. We record in audio only. Feel free to use the podcast on our website along with your big book as a study resource if you missed the study portion of the meeting. The study portion is also listed on the website so you can follow along. Tonight's recap starts on page 51 and ends on 52. The study starts on 52 and ends on 54. Are there any announcements?
We do. I'm Trish and I am an alcoholic, and we will be having a group conscience on Monday, March 23rd at 7:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Central Time, and you can work the times back. And we will also be having a Trusted Servants meeting the weekend before that on the 8th, and I will email or text everybody out on the times for that.
Okay. Oh, it's Shayna's turn. Sorry, I'm ready to just take over here.
There you go.
There we go.
Oh, I thought it was me.
No, I'm pretty sure it's me. All right. Good evening, everyone. And I'm a recovered alcoholic, and my name is Shayna. Welcome to the Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. To prepare for our Big Book study, let's get focused by having a 3-minute moment of silent meditation followed by our family's fog light prayer.
Okay, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name is Terry. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to start the meditation in a minute, so please take a moment to get situated.
Please be aware of background noises when you are unmuted and sharing as not to distract others or yourself. We suggest we all observe proper Zoom etiquette. If you wouldn't do it in a live meeting, please don't do it here. A friendly reminder that absence of profanity offends no one. Please keep yourself muted during someone else's share. We will call on you in the order hands are raised.
From the forward to the first edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are many thousands of men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book and of this group.
For the meditation, some suggestions are focus your breath and posture. Breathe in God and breathe out self.
Take this time to reconnect with God and let the craziness of the day drift away and ask God to help you focus on the study.
And let's bring in those monks. Who's
One
got
of
it?
you say something.
Waiting for the fog light prayer.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Fog light prayer. God, let your love shine through us like a fog light, so that those that are lost, sick, and dying can find your love through us. Amen.
Amen. Okay, let's have the secretary report. Come on in, Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I'm your recovered alcoholic secretary. I've asked Jacqueline to read the recovered statement. We read this notice to explain why many people in this group identify as recovered rather than recovering, and what it exactly means to be a recovered alcoholic. Take it away, Jacqueline.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline M., and I'm a recovered alcoholic. Recovered. We are not cured of alcoholism. Recovered, but not cured. That presents a conflict to some alcoholics. If we were cured, we would be able to drink responsibly. No, we are not cured. The allergy reaction to alcohol will remain with us for a lifetime. But we have been restored to sanity. That was the problem. The main problem of the alcoholic center in his mind rather than in his body. Page 23. We are now sane where alcohol is concerned. Consequently, we have recovered.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We meet every Tuesday starting at 5:30 p.m. Central Time with the Gerbil Fellowship Cage, where we chatter for an hour before the start of the meeting. Feel free to bring side dishes to share with the buzzards. Our Big Book study starts promptly at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and we ask that you be courteous and ready to begin at the sound of the foghorn. We take our Big Book study seriously. Because of this, chat will be disabled during the study. In the 1940s, when the only elements to sobriety were God, a Big Book, and one recovered alcoholic working with an untreated alcoholic, the success rate was as follows. From the foreword to the second edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, page XX. Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapsed, and the remainder, those who stayed on with AA, showed improvement. Can we have a show of hands of people joining us for the first time?
We've got a few. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Glad you're here. Okay, and then the recovered alcoholics. Raise your hand, please. These are your potential sponsors. And is there anybody celebrating a milestone this week?
Doesn't look like it.
No takers. If you should require a big book of your own, we have large print editions available that can be sent to you by Buzzard mail, delivery time questionable. Please remember to practice our seventh tradition by donating to the group address, Venmo, or PayPal posted in chat and on the screen. Our suggestion is to purchase a big book and take an untreated alcoholic through the program of recovery. Please visit our website, posted in chat. Thank you, and Lord willing, I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Stephanie. And from chapter 2, there is a solution. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism.
Okay, while this is an open meeting, membership in this group is limited to those. Now, wait a minute. This is an open meeting. Sorry. This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you need not identify yourself, nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours.
While this is an open meeting, membership in this group is limited to those who wish to recover from alcoholism and have a desire to stop drinking for good and all. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is a potential sponsor of a new member and should clearly recognize the obligations and duties of such a responsibility.
Okay, time for the traditions. Before we begin our study of the Big Book, last week we reviewed Tradition 6. Tonight, let's take a quick look at Tradition 7. Please refer to page 562 of Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah.
So, Tradition 7, short form. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. And the long form. The AA groups themselves ought to be fully self-supporting by voluntary contributions of their own membership. We think that each group should soon achieve this ideal, that any public solicitation of funds using the name of Alcoholics Anonymous is highly dangerous, whether by groups, clubs, hospitals, or other outside agencies. That acceptance of large gifts from any source or of contributions carrying any obligation whatever is unwise. Then too, we view with much concern those AA treasuries which continue beyond prudent reserves to accumulate funds for no stated purpose. Experience has often warned us that nothing can surely destroy our spiritual heritage as futile disputes over property, money, and authority. So, I love this tradition, folks, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what seventh traditions go for. I've seen it in other groups, but I'm going to tell you what happens here at Lewisburg Primary Purpose Group. It goes for literature and pamphlets. And if you see my screen, I'm holding some up. That's part of what it does. It pays for the Zoom room and for our website so that we can podcast this meeting and put it out to the rest of the world. Our seventh tradition buys cases of big books, and in our entirety of our last 6 years, we have been able to gift 100 big books to newcomers who come in who don't have a big book. Some of them return, some of them never come back, but what we have been able to do with that is plant a seed, and that is incredibly important. We don't endorse anything outside of Alcoholics Anonymous in this group. Yeah, we have some other things that we do, like Pickle Palooza and so on, but our seventh tradition never pays for that. That's all done out of pocket by our individuals. Said something here very important about contributions and obligations. We had a member a few years ago who gifted our group a sum of $5,000, and he was dying of cancer, very treasured, valued member of this group. And what he said to me is, Jamie, I would like this money to go to help the newcomer for a long time to come. So by group conscience, what we did was we took that money and we split it off into a savings account, and we decided to do something very specific with it. And what we do with it is we purchase big books at every quarter assembly that we go to. So 4 times a year, I take 40 big books to assembly to give to the corrections committee so that the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous can get into the prison system and carry this message. So that's some of the kinds of things that we do. It was a very generous gift, and we are very blessed to do it. It also mentioned prudent reserves. So we sat down and we figured out what our operating costs were per year for this group. To host the Zoom meeting, to have our website, to purchase big books, to try and help others. And we came up with our expenses run at $2,500 a year. Now, we have never maintained a balance of $2,500, but somehow we get through the year and have had plenty of money. One of the reasons for that expense is so that we can send our GSR, who Larry's around here somewhere, Scuba Pickle, there he is. He's our GSR for this group, so that we can afford to send him and pay his hotel and transportation to assemblies to represent the voice of this group at the area level. And that's one of the reasons. That runs us probably a little over $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 a year. The other thing that all of this does is it absolutely allows us to basically live on a shoestring but still carry the message that this group carries, which is the primary purpose of carrying the message in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and helping someone to find their pathway to recovery. It also, for us, takes care of everything that we need to. Oftentimes, in fact, I'm down to my last big book right here. And I'm going to send it out tonight to someone who called me today and said, I need some help. So I asked him if I could send him a big book, and I will. So it's time for me to go purchase more big books for our group. And that's just a little insight as to what we do. You know, we don't have building rent, we don't have coffee to make and those things that we do in traditional bricks and mortar meetings, but we still have operating costs as a group. We certainly never beg for money, but we certainly welcome when the contributions come. And that is the beautiful thing about it. You know, how much money did I spend when I was drinking in a bar? You know, I'd spend hundreds of dollars a night drinking. So if I just put the price of a drink into the basket, I'm trying to pay forward and make sure that this group exists tomorrow for the next newcomer that comes in. We all have $1,000 cell phones and all kinds of stuff today. It's not my business to manage anybody's money life. But I can tell you that we are grateful for any penny And when you come to our business meetings, you will see our financial expense report so that we can be accountable to those who contribute. And that's what I got for you on Tradition 7 tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. It's time for That Ain't in the Book.
All right, now it's our weekly installment of That Ain't in the Book. We hear a lot of stuff said in meetings that can't be reconciled with the program as described in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the things we often hear is, this is a selfish program. Joanne, can you tell us what it says on page 14 to 15?
Yes, I can. Join alcoholics. It says, for if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trial and low spot ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we study, please make use of pens, highlighters, and rulers so that you can share this experience with another alcoholic.
In order for us to stay focused as we study the Big Book, we use the Big Book study guide prepared by Joel and Charlie and Krusty Cliff of the Dallas Primary Purpose Group.
Tonight, we are going to start a recap on page 51, which will be read tonight by Nancy, followed by our study portion, which starts on page 52, that will be read by Donald.
After the page is read, we will ask questions from the imaginary podium, starting back on our study portion that was read by Donald. The answers will be one sentence unless otherwise specified, and multi-part questions are just simply a one-sentence answer. And it's split up by commas, semicolons, hyphens, and other fun bits of punctuation.
Basically, in English, what that means is that we're going to read the material once through and then dissect the information a second time through the question and answer format. Notice how the language in the questions gives us a new light in which to consider the study material.
This is important because hearing the question and rereading the content offers a definite way of comprehending the material covered. After we've completed this study, we open up for comment, questions, and observations based on what was just read. If you have spiritual experiences with this information, you are free to share. Please keep your share on topic and under 5 minutes. At the 5-minute mark, you may hear a timer beep to let you know that your time is finished.
However, Big Book study is not therapy. Should you begin sharing on topics which are more appropriately discussed in a different setting, like with your sponsor, please do not be offended when we cut that conversation short and send the buzzers nipping at your heels. For that purpose, we have fellowship meetings before and after our study time.
You can never go wrong by commenting on the pages studied. Which brings us to the words of one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous: sobriety, freedom from alcohol, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps, is the sole purpose of any Alcoholics Anonymous group.
Okay, how we arrived at this point, I have been taking a little bit of notes, so it's kind of scattered information, so bear with me. This is the first time I haven't handed it over to Trish or Jamie. Okay, so this is a 96-week study. We are on week 34, I believe. Hold on. Yes, we're on week 34. This meeting started in January 2020 in person at Jamie's house. And when COVID hit, it went strictly to Zoom. So that's how we ended up here on Zoom. We're from all over the country. So we couldn't have an in-person meeting even if we wanted to, except at Picklepalooza at Jamie's house in the summer. But we are all together, even though we're from all different parts of the country and other countries as well. We start on the title page and read from the title page through 164, including Appendix 2, the spiritual experience. We read that 3 times. That's how important it is. We're on our 4th time reading this book, and we are in our 6th year. So we also read the 12 traditions. We split that up into 4 weeks, 3 each week. And so that's where I stopped taking notes. So that's all I got. Thank you for letting me give it a try.
You did good. You did really good.
Thanks, partner.
Yes. Before we start the recap, we'll need 5 or 6 virtual hands raised if you would like to be one of our answer readers. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website and our YouTube channel.
Okay, we are gonna start with the recap. Nancy, take it away.
Thank you. Nancy Alcoholic, page 51. This world of ours has made more material progress in the last century than in all the millenniums which went before. Almost everyone knows the reason. Students of ancient history tells us that the intellect of men in those days was equal to the best of today. Yet, in ancient times, material progress was painfully slow. The spirit of modern scientific inquiry, research and invention was almost unknown. In the realm of the material, man's mind was fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Some of the contemporaries of Columbus thought a round earth was preposterous. Others came near putting Galileo to death for his astronomical heresy. We ask ourselves this: are not some of us just as biased and unreasonable about the realm of the spirit as were the ancient about the realm of the material? Even in the present century, American newspapers were afraid to print an account of the Wright brothers' first successful flights at Kitty Hawk. Had not all efforts at flight failed before? Did not Professor Langley's flying machine, go to the bottom of the Potomac River? Was it not true that the best mathematical minds had proved man could never fly? Had not people said God had reserved this privilege to the birds? Only 30 years later, the conquest of the air was almost an old story, and airplane travel was in full swing. But in most fields, our generation has witnessed complete liberation of our thinking. Joe N. Longshoreman, a Sunday supplement describing a proposal to explore the moon by means of a rocket, and he will say, I bet they do it, maybe not so long either. Is that our age characterized by the ease with which we discard all ideas for new, by the complete readiness with which we throw away the theory or gadget which did not work for something new which does? Wow. We had to ask ourselves why we should apply to human problems this same readiness to change our point of view. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control the emotional nature. We were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We could seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of this bewilderment more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flights? Of course it was. When we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, we have enough hands raised, so I don't have to plead for any more. Okay, now for the study reading will be read tonight by the one and only Donald
Gandalf the Red Pickle.
Take it away, Donald.
Good afternoon, evening, everyone. My name is Donald, aka Gandalf the Red Pickle, and I'm a very grateful recovered but not cured alcoholic. Continuing on, the Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could build a machine which would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. Without that, nothing could have happened. We agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea that self-sufficiency would solve our problems. When others showed us that God's sufficiency worked with them, we began to feel like those who had insisted the Wrights would never fly. Logic is great stuff. We liked it. We still like it. It is not by chance that we were given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, and to draw conclusions. This is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostically inclined would not feel satisfied with a proposal which does not lend itself to be reasonable approach and interpretation. Hence, we are at pains to tell why we we think present faith is reasonable, why we think it more sane and logical to believe than not to believe, why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy when we threw up our hands in doubt and said, "We don't know." When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? Arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. The outlines and promises of the new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. Friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far. But somehow, we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we did not like to lose our support. That was natural. But let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, we had not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith. Or did we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we had been faithful, objectively faithful to the God of reason. So, in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. Whoa. Thank you for letting me read. Back back to you, Carrie.
Thank you, Donald. Okay, for our answer readers, please speak clearly into your microphones. We will ask the questions from our script by Joe and Charlie and Krusty Cliff. The answers to the questions will be sentence by sentence coming directly out of this week's study, beginning with the first sentence and ending with the last one. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, my lineup for tonight is Linda, Nancy, Joanne, Larry, and William. Thank you all so much for volunteering. Okay, we'll start with Linda. On page 52, what made it possible for the Wright brothers to be successful?
The Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could build a machine which would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment.
Thank you, Linda. What would happen without it, Nancy?
Okay, without that, nothing could have happened.
Thanks. Joanne, what were the agnostics and the atheists doing?
We agnostic and atheists was sticking to the idea that self-sufficient will solve our problem.
Thanks, Joanne. Larry, what did the recovered alcoholics show everyone?
When others showed us that God's sufficiency worked with them, we began to feel like those who had insisted the Wrights would never fly.
Thanks, Larry. Okay, back to, William. Still got William here, top of 53. What is logic? William?
Logic is great stuff.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Okay, back to the top of the lineup. Linda, how do we feel about it? 2 sentences.
We liked it. We still like it.
Nancy, how do we feel about what have we been given?
It is not by chance we were given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, and to draw conclusions.
Joanne, is it an asset or a liability?
That is one of man's magnificent attributes.
Okay, Larry, what would an agnostic not be satisfied with?
We, agnostically inclined, would not feel satisfied with a proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation.
William, what do we have difficulty in telling?
Yes, we are at pain to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable. Our present faith is reasonable. Why we think it more sane and logical to believe than not to believe. Excuse me.
Okay.
Why we say okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy when we threw up our hands in doubt and said, we don't know.
Okay. Back to Linda. As hopeless alcoholics, what proposition must we face?
When we become alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he is.
Oh, okay, wait. That's Nancy's line. Sorry. What choice must we make, Nancy? 2 sentences.
God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be?
Joanne. With what are we now confronted?
arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith.
Larry, could we ignore it?
We couldn't duck the issue.
William, what have some of us already done?
Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason towards the desired show of faith.
Linda, what had given us fresh courage?
The outlines and the promises of the new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I have a comment. Did coming to AA from a state of hopelessness and seeing and hearing recovered alcoholics tell their stories give you some hope?
Okay, Nancy, how were we welcomed?
Perhaps we had been leading to heavenly.
No, friendly hands.
Friendly hands had stretched out in welcome.
Beautiful.
Did you receive a warm welcome on your arrival at AA?
Larry, how do we feel about our sense of reason?
Me?
Yes, Larry.
We were grateful that reason had brought us so far.
Did going to meetings and not drinking make sense?
William, what could we not do?
But somehow we could not quite step ashore.
When someone said, take the steps by the clear-cut directions in the big book, what did you do?
Linda, what were we relying on?
Perhaps we have been leaning too heavily on reason and that last mile, and we did not like to lose our support.
Was this your thinking when you came to AA? Since I'm going to meetings and not drinking, why should I do this other stuff? I'm doing just fine, and I'm not going to humiliate myself by taking these steps. I really don't need them. How long am I willing to sit in the pain of self-reliance? Does it really work for me?
Good question. Nancy, what do we need to do at this point?
That was natural, but let us think a little more closely.
Joanne, what had happened without us being aware of it?
Without knowing it, had we not been brought to we stood by a certain kind of faith.
Larry, what did we believe in?
Or did we not believe in our own reasoning?
William, what did we have confidence in?
Did we not have confidence in our ability to think?
Linda, that was sort of what?
What was that but a sort of faith?
Nancy, to what had we been faithful?
Yes, we had been faithful, abjectly faithful to the God of reason.
And last question goes to Joanne. When was faith not part of our daily lives?
So in one way or another, we discovered that faith has been involved all the time.
Amen.
Right. Okay, if you have experience with this portion of the book that was just read, please feel free to share. Please be mindful of your time and that others may have their hands raised and are waiting to share. A friendly reminder as we share, absence of profanity offends no one. We are now open for comment, questions, observations, and spiritual experience based on what was just read. Everybody's got their hands lowered. Okay. So raise your hand and I will call on you. Who wants to start us out? Oh, Linda, there you are.
Hi, my name is Linda. I'm an alcoholic. I like how they start off with the Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could build a machine which would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. It says it, either God is or God isn't. I have to rely on my God. And I have to have that, not, I guess it's not childish, but I have to have that childlike faith. I have to just give it all to God. I have to throw my hands up and say, God, that's it. I'm giving this all to you. I'm putting my life in your hands. I trust in you that I will get sober and I will stay sober. And then as I stay in AA, I like what it said about, oh, well, I'm just sober, so do I have to do all this other stuff too? Yes, most definitely. If you want a healthy recovery, if you don't want to go back out. Or if you don't go back out, then you'd be pretty miserable and nuts. They say not using the steps, nuts. So yes, I have to, after the drink is taken from me, well, then I'm left with me and all those character defects. So yes, there has to be a lot of work done. It has to be a lot. It's a lot of house cleaning. It's a lot of restoration. And then I have to help others. I can't just think, well, I'm going to sit on my laurels. No. How am I going to stay sober? Get a sponsee. That's an insurance policy, keeping me staying sober. And as far as with the belief, I have to have that childlike, spirit of faith in God, where I'm just giving it all to God. And I have to stop with this self-sufficiency, with this logic, this reasoning. We're trying to analyze things. We're so smart. I have this degree, I have that degree. All that doesn't mean anything. When it comes down to it, who woke me up this morning, God? Who puts me to sleep, God? Who got me sober, God? Who dragged me on my face into AA and gave me grace and mercy to even be in this program for 37 years? God. And I don't want to be in AA dry. I don't want sobriety. I want sobriety. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Linda. Larry, take it away.
Yeah, I'm Larry, and I'm an alcoholic. I know my reasoning of God kept me away from God for a long time, even when I got into AA, and even at the beginning, I chose my sponsor's God to pray to. I couldn't even choose my own God, because of my reasoning of how I felt about him and how I thought he felt about me. It was my reasoning that kept me at bay away from him. So reasoning was a big part of me at first being standoffish of God. My first step of getting closer to God was when my sponsor told me that I had to quit hijacking his God and pick my own conception. And I remember it because I finally picked my childhood God. That was the God of my understanding. That was the last time that I felt that God loved me was when I was a child. And so that was the God I picked. It was the childlike. And so I had to become a child in order to believe in God. And that was my first experience in AA, in believing in the God that I know today in AA, which is a much more mature God and a much more involved and personal God for me. And so I read this and I see the progression in my own life of how reasoning played in my life, and how the progression of childlike faith played for me, and how this experience type God that I have today, the God of my experience, which is much more matured and much more, I have to, I play a part because I have a part in this relationship, that I have to do work in the program to get results, in the program. And it's much more satisfying because I see it at work as I progress in it, and as I progress in relationship. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Larry. Josh or Jamie or both?
I'm Jamie. I'm an alcoholic. These pages mean a lot to me. It's the first time that I could actually see where I had been so selfish, that I and not childlike. These two pages taught me that God is either everything or He's nothing. That He never left me; I left Him. So through these pages right here, I was able to start putting God before myself, and being able to sit still and listen a little bit. And for me, until I could have that childlike faith and put faith in something I couldn't hear, smell, touch, or see, there was no way I was ever going to be able to put faith in anything that I could hear, smell, touch, or see. I don't know, that just opened that door of willingness, and it helped me realize, that God had been there the whole time. I just chose or couldn't rely on Him, seeing, touching, smelling. um, but the moment that I did start doing that, like, I don't know, I couldn't trust humans. I couldn't trust my own logic. I couldn't trust my own thinking. But for whatever, in that moment, as I was reading that with my sponsor, I could see, looking back in my mind, in my own past, that God had always been there. And it opened the door for me to be able to trust, and believe and have that childlike faith in a higher power. At that time, I had no clue what to call it. It was, it was the sun coming up and the moon going down. It was the wind, the smells, things that weren't controllable. But it set me forth on a path to even start looking for that. And until I started looking for that, I was not able to look at anything inside of me, anything that was wrong or distorted. But because of those questions and the way that it got my mind to thinking, it set me on a path to start seeking an higher power. And I have been taught, and I know it to be 100% true. What you seek is what you will find. If you seek recovery, that's what you find. If you seek God, that's what you find. If you seek truth, that's what you're going to find. If you seek clarity, if you say a few prayers and ask for it, discernment, that's what you're going to find. If you seek negativity, that's what you're going to find. So that set me on a path of seeking something greater than myself. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Jamie. William.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, thanks, Pickerchip. Pickerchip. Thanks for calling on me. My name is William Alcoholic. Whenever we read something like this, I get a chance to see how I was before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I tell you, I was blind by alcoholism. I couldn't see none of this until I came here and began to read the literature and began to identify with what was going on with me, And I like he used that word reason. And that same word, I use a different definition for that when I was out there. I use willpower. I got willpower. I always tell everybody, I came from a hard place in life. And I began to win at the materialistic world. And I began to get little things that I didn't have before. So I thought that I could do the same thing with alcohol. So I got willpower. I remember going away to the rehab. And my counselor was telling me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I tell my counselor, I got willpower. I could do this. I could stay away from alcohol and stuff. I said, we just go to AA. And somehow it took me about, after coming from that rehab, it took me about 18 months before I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went, So you talk about the friendly people there, whenever they met me, they were smiling, they had, already?
No, it wasn't reset. You're fine.
Okay, then. And the people in the room were very friendly, very smiling. I didn't trust them that much because they was too friendly at the time. Because when my trust issue had left me, but I began to look at them. When I was drinking, I had my liver was shot, and I had 2 red eyes, man. And every time I looked in the mirror, those 2 big red eyes were looking back at me. Now, if you ever had a car and the battery die, and you run it on the alternator or the generator, you see how the light looked. That's the way my eyes were looking, So the logical was that's what I wanted. The glow of their skin, they looked all clean and they were smiling. And sometimes whenever I say something, they laughed at me. And I got pissed off because they were chuckling at me and said, what's so funny, So nothing was funny until I came around and began to do that. But like it showed, the reason my willpower had took me so far in life, but I just couldn't step ashore, and that's what happened whenever they was there to welcome me, and I began to hear them talk, and I began to identify what they were saying. They began to tell their story. They was talk about them, because if you said something about me, if you point one thing at me, I could point 3 right back at you. I could point your character defects out. Most of the time, then you showed that the one that I had, So, but they was telling their own story and talking about themselves and stuff. So that made me listen, Now, I didn't really believe them, you know what I mean? But I kept coming. And one thing, as I began to read the literature, and I began to see back in 1939 when they wrote this book, they knew more about me than I knew about myself. So I keep coming because of that, And definitely my faith have grown, since I've been Alcoholics Anonymous, And today I'm at peace with myself and the world about me. Now, that's a day at a time, because some days it's different than others. But one thing I have been successful with, not drinking for a few 24s when whatever goes down, And that's because of the program, and that's because of God. I truly believe in God. As I look back over my life, God was there all the time. God was there all the time, helping me to get to where I'm at today. It's just whenever I began to get some more educational and accepting what to do about what was wrong with me, that it began to work into my life. And then what I found out about the whole thing, because I used to try to get that stuff outside, to feel that dark hole inside of me. it wasn't until I went inside and started working on those things inside of me that I began to find the peace and I began to be happy with myself. Just like those people met me whenever I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Today I'm one of those people too. Happy to be here and happy to help anybody else that come on this way. So thank you so much, everybody, for your service. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, William. Xavier, hi.
Hey, good evening. Xavier, recovered alcoholic, multitask. So happy to be here. There's a special place in HE double hockey sticks for anyone that a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh, very, very disturbing. All right, so super happy and stoked to be here. I love this meeting. I love the literature. I adore all these new faces. Couldn't believe how many were on in the beginning. So I'm so happy for anyone that's new to this meeting that you joined us. I hope you keep coming back. They study this book like a textbook, and for me, like I can't think of a much better ROI of spending an hour and a half, and studying the book of Alcoholics Anonymous like a textbook. When I came in, I was in and out for many years. Could barely get 30 days sober, and I kept coming back. And as I started to learn through the literature, which was alluded to before, William, I think, noted it too, that when we learn this book, when we learn the literature, everything can radically change. And there's so many golden nuggets like in this book. And getting to chapter 4, getting past the first step, first 43 pages plus the doctor's opinion. When we get past, am I an alcoholic? Am I powerless? Do I have the obsession of the mind? And the allergy. Then I can look at the solution and I can start to think, okay, maybe there's this God, this other higher power that can heal me. I'm clearly insane. And then we get to chapter 5, how it works. We start to get an exact action. And what I found is when I first went through the book, I started to get a lot of relief. And by the time you get to the 9th step, 10th step, you're recovered. You're recovered. Like the first original 100. It's pretty remarkable. And then when I sponsored other men and brought them through the book, then things radically changed for me because I got much stronger in my program. And my experience today is these are very deep spiritual principles that Bill and the first 100 came upon through the Oxford group, and they applied it towards alcoholics. And they made 6 tenets into sorry, my brain's the other night. Made it 12 steps. And what I found is you can apply, it's like discovering a superpower. If I'm willing to go in the big book, I can apply it anywhere. I can apply it to my family, being the best husband, being the best father. I can apply it to business. I can apply it to literally anywhere. If there's a power that's so strong, so radically strong, it can remove this obsession, and I don't even feel like drinking. I don't want to drink. The idea of drinking is repulsive. Like, that is beyond incredible. And what if I took this same power and applied it to life on a daily basis? And the good news is, by the time I get to chapter 5, I find out that alcohol is not even my problem. It was my solution. My issue is self-centeredness. And then it gives me a solution to live. It gives me a solution to live. And when life hits, I get to call people like my sponsor, who's much smarter than I am. His name happens to be Jamie. And I go to him and I say, listen, I did it again. I'm acting like a knucklehead. And then he helps, and he asks me questions, and he shares experience, and he helps me apply the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's really the solution. So it's remarkable. It's remarkable. Last thing, and I'll probably go over my time. I don't see the time, but is 1 minute. I can knock it out. Okay, so here's a very quick story. It's years ago. I have an insanely hard court appearance. It's against a bunch of very strong, amazing female attorneys from like a suburb of the Twin Cities, Minnesota, and it's just me against them. And I pray And my sponsor at the time says, he gives me a secret. He says, I pray to God to use my hands. And when he does his work, like take over my hands, take over everything. So I said, God, please take over my mouth, take over my brain, take over my hands, take over everything when I give these legal arguments and when I prepare. So I wrote one of the best legal memorandums I've ever written. And then when we did the argument in front of a judge, it was like an hour and a half. It was very intense. We won that. It was when I asked God to work through me, I can apply that to business. I can apply that again to being a husband. I can apply it to being a father. I can bring God anywhere. And that's a superpower. So that's all I got. And I do have resentment against bombers. And they get hit by a bus. I won't be upset. I'll call it sponsor.
Thanks, Xavier. Okay, I saw another hand. Where did it go? Thought I saw another hand. This is what Jamie calls the dental chair.
I'll come in, Terry.
Thanks, Trish.
I'm Trish and I'm an alcoholic. And, I like how it started out talking about the Wright brothers' almost childish faith. And a lot of people have touched on that because, I did have a faith as a child. And I believed when I was a child that, God could get me to and through anything and I could be anything I wanted. And somewhere I lost that. And then it talks about having to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. And by the time I got to that point, I was so far removed from that childlike faith that part of me wanted to say he was nothing because look at what you did to me, look at where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
But I also didn't want to say God is nothing because what if God was something? I wasn't quite ready to say God is everything. But I became willing to believe that maybe God is, and which brought us to those two choices. Either God is or isn't. And I had to make a choice. And I didn't want to say, I was afraid to say God wasn't, or God was nothing. So, God it is kind of where I was. And once I was at that point, it said we squarely confronted the question of faith. And I didn't really even look at faith or God at that point. I just left it at that. God is, and went on my merry way. But I was still living in that self-reliance, and that work reliance, and that boyfriend reliance, and everyone and everything else defined me, but not God. And all of those things left for one reason or another. And that made room for God to come back in. Because all these things that I had used to define myself were gone. And all that was left was God. And I realized I could not have gotten through what I got through to where I was without God. Even if I wasn't relying on him, he was still carrying me through. And that realization brought me to the aha moment of, if he did all that for me without me asking, where could I go if I did ask? And then I started spending more time in prayer, more time in meditation. Would I like more? Sure I would. But coming back or all the way around into that, not the same faith I had as a child, but the faith that's similar to the faith of God is everything. And I can do anything with God, which is a far cry where I came in of, Yeah, God exists. He's somewhere way, way, way out there. And even as a kid, it's like Santa Claus is 2 or 3 clouds below God, and that's about all I knew. They both watched us, they both knew what we were doing, and Santa brought me presents and God didn't. But surprise, surprise, God brought me a whole lot more than Santa ever did. God brought me my life back. God brought me the people in my life who could then bring me back to Him. There is a church in town where there's 4 or 5 different groups who have meetings 5 days a week, morning, noon, and night. And the pastor there used to say she loved watching the people downstairs meet God and move upstairs. But there were also a couple people upstairs that she was kind of hoping would move downstairs. But that's what God can do. God can put us where we need to be. And then once we get to that point, that's where I found the willingness to believe that God not only got me there, but could take me a whole lot further if I was willing to let go of that self-reliance and give it and all into God reliance. Thanks.
Thanks, Trish. Who is next?
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Twisted my arm, Terry. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Donald, a.k.a. Gandalf the Red Pickle. Grateful, recovered, but not cured alcoholic. Whenever it comes to faith, I think back about the one quote that really made me think. And whenever you're driving on the road and all of a sudden you see a billboard that says, when you realize that you're not in traffic, that you are traffic. That makes you realize, oh my God, I never thought about it that way. But whenever we think about God as being everything, we are part of God, just like God is part of us. Because if everything else is God, I am just right here. I'm just this so minute little speck, or half a speck, or of a speck on a planet that's going around our great little sun, which is going around our great little galaxy. And how many other galaxies are there out there? And how far away are they? It really makes you realize, that what we do have is a belief in a God that created all this. That He's got a master plan of everything. My sponsor told me and stuff, that bad things happen to good people for a reason. And also, he also said that, that God doesn't create chaos to break us, but instead to bend us towards Him. And when we put our spirituality towards Him, it takes us away from our alcoholism or alcoholic minds of, our desire, to drink, to think in a false way. My granddaughter's going through something, and we were talking about it earlier today and stuff, and she was actually thinking about drinking and using. And I says, what would that be? Or how how would that help anybody? She said, oh, I know, I just want to numb. But then the thing is, that you're robbing yourself of the feelings and just masking it, because it's not going to change any fact, but it allows you to think in a great way, to be of benefit. And instead of wasting this time, spend the time in a right way. Make the best of it. Because God just gives us, so much time. And, it's just a wonderful feeling, instead, to be thankful to a God for creating everything and giving me so much, and giving me the understanding of the big book that I have, that I'm still learning. And if I have just a little bit of faith, like the size of a mustard seed, I can go to the moon. I can go anywhere. I can do anything, as long as he says it's okay. But I can't do anything without him. So, my name's Donald. I love you guys. I hope I didn't ramble and stuff, and I hope you understood what I was saying. So, God bless you guys. Thank you.
Oops, I unmuted myself. I guess we could go ahead and close out. Jamie, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, we still got 10 minutes. Good evening, family. My name's Jamie. Very grateful recovered alcoholic, and good to be with all of you tonight. You've heard me say this before. I believe the chapter to the Agnostic is probably one of the most profound pieces of literature ever written on this planet. And it gives me a pathway to let go of old ideas and old beliefs and open my heart and mind to new ideas and new beliefs. Born and raised religiously, in that childlike faith that I had, somewhere through my disease and different crises through my life, I questioned God. Therefore, I questioned that faith that I had as a little boy. And I went into a self-reliance, and I put worship in other things, in drugs, in alcohol, in stuff, in relationships. And I made those people my higher power. It took me 24 and a half years of being sober and hitting such a deep emotional, spiritual bottom that while I had God in my life for that 24 and a half years, the only thing I knew how to do was to pull over and pray. And for me personally, ask the Son of God back into my life. That's for me. Because I was at a place where I was suicidal at 24 and a half years old. And while I am a man of strong faith today, my life is evidence of what God has done in my life. I didn't do any of this. The only thing that I became in this journey in sobriety is a willing participant to not live in the emotional pain that I was living in. I can remember after my wife died, probably had been a year or so, I sat here on this couch in tears, saying, it is unacceptable for me to live in this deep emotional pain that I'm in. What would you have me be? Who would you have me be? And that started the journey of everything that we're doing here, of this group. Took a few months for it to all come together. And here's what I know to be a fact in my life today. That I have absolute faith and trust in God that He's going to do what is necessary for me to grow in my relationship with Him as long as I am willing. Got a flashlight in my hand. When we go to turn the flashlight on, we all believe and have faith that it's going to turn on. That we're going to have light where we need it. When we hit the light switch, we have faith. When we go to flush the toilet, hopefully we're not living in a situation where I say, oh God, I hope the plumbing's working okay. We have faith that it is going to work. We drive over a bridge and we can't see what's holding it up and suspending it, but we have the faith that it's not going to collapse on us and we're going to fall in the ditch or the river or the ocean or whatever. But it's so difficult for us to trust God when it comes to certain things in our life. I'm holding up a $20 bill. We've got lots of faith and trust when we have some of this in the bank and we can buy the groceries and pay the bills and buy gasoline and everything in life is okay. But when this diminishes, all of a sudden we start questioning, am I going to be okay? And yet I flip it around and what does it say? In God we trust. So we trust in the almighty dollar more than we trust in God. Self-reliance destroyed my spiritual well-being. So we're still in step 2 here. And next we'll be on to step 3. So the chapter to the agnostic, along with the personal stories in the back of the book, are the beginning of coming to believe. It doesn't say we had to believe. It says that we came to believe. Each day I didn't pick up a drink, my faith increased, and I knew it wasn't something I was doing. Because I kept praying to this power, please relieve me of the mental obsession. And as I started going through the process of taking the steps, God revealed the truth to me about me. And it was ugly, and it was uncomfortable. I didn't like seeing who that person was, but here's the thing. In absolutely every experience of my life, including when I was this tall and I was a victim to things I shouldn't have been a victim to, I have had to have in order to be who I am today. I do not break my arm patting myself on the back thinking I'm somebody special. I'm just simply one of God's kids trying to help some of God's other kids along this journey. I know people in Alcoholics Anonymous who have alcohol glass stains on their Bibles because they used it as a coaster. But I know this, that when the pain becomes greater than the fear of change, that's when I develop the willingness to change. And that's when I ask God to help me. I don't pray for stuff anymore, and you know, In the book on page 87, and that gives us a couple of other references in Bill's story, never was I to pray for my own selfish ends. But I could pray, however, for myself if I was praying for others to be helped. So today my prayer life is so simplistic. I never ask for anything for me. What I do is I go to God with a grateful, thankful heart for another day, for every life lesson I've ever had, good, bad, or indifferent, because it's all been part of the journey. And then I ask God 3 simple questions every day without fail. Father, how can I serve you today? How can I serve your children? And please show me the pathway. And I don't know what that looks like when I ask it, and I don't plan it, but here's what I do know. God reveals it to me, one meeting at a time, one text at a time, one phone call at a time, one conversation at a time. And most of today has been on the phone or on Zoom, working face-to-face with people for 2.5 hours each. And I have this reasonable idea that all of that is the answer to what this morning's prayer was. How can I serve you? How can I serve your children? Please show me the pathway. That's the miracle of this whole thing. Having a conversation with someone today, and the question was, somebody had asked this individual, well, how do you expand and enlarge your spiritual life? And the first part of his answer was wrong. The second part of his answer was right. Working with others and helping them find their pathway. But I have to remember that this whole relationship between me and God is something that is deep and personal to me. Preacher man always led me to believe that I couldn't have a personal relationship with God, that I had to have somebody be the intermediate between that, and that was the preacher or somebody else. Of course, that's not what the good book says. So this whole spiritual journey, it's up to me to take the action that will build that relationship with God. Am I a perfect human being? Absolutely not. Will never claim to be. I am above no one and I am below no one. I am shoulder to shoulder with everyone in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the things that all of this has taught me, including this chapter, is that I am not to come from a place of judgment in anyone's life. The freedom and responsibility that each person who comes to Alcoholics Anonymous is given to find a God of their own understanding that will work for them. God, higher power. Your God doesn't have to look like mine or anybody else's in this room, though it can. Doesn't have to look like the popes, the Mormon bishop, the Baptist minister, or the snake shaker. Just needs to be a power that we can depend on as an individual. I'll touch on this and then I'll shut up. In tonight's reading, talking about agnostic temperament. So a little history of when the book was in the process of being written. Frank Burwell and Hank Parkhurst were both atheists, and they're like, Bill, you got too much of this God stuff in here. You got to take it out. But they could live with the idea of higher power or power greater than yourself. And so that's what Bill used. Until we got to page 45, and then Bill put God back in the whole deal. What a miracle. You know, I trust that everybody has a higher power. I trust that you have some sort of God in your life. It's not my job to manage life for anyone else. I trust that whether you're in a good place spiritually or you're a place of deep emotional pain, that you will find that power if you call on it. I even trust that the Zoom bombers will someday have a power greater than themselves in life because they're just future members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And one day they'll be sitting in the rooms thinking back, and all of a sudden you'll hear an amends come from one of them. And I've experienced that in the last few years since COVID. The spiritual life is not a theory. I have to live it. But the only way that I can live it is to take the journey that is sometimes dark and painful with someone who has the experience to light the pathway for me. And through that process, I find the God of my experience. When I work with someone, my goal is to get them through the discovery process of step one and help them find their God, so that instead of becoming group dependent or sponsor dependent, they become God dependent. And I take every aspect of my life, even the little ankle biters, to God and ask for help. And that's a blessing. Sorry I went on so long, but hey, you know, it is what it is. Thank you.
Okay, it's time to close the meeting unless anybody else has a burning desire to share. Hey, Shana, there you are. Would you read the closing for us?
I am here. Yes, Shayna, recovered alcoholic. I needed you all more than I realized tonight. Thank you all for being here. From page 164, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then.
Okay, we're going to close out with the Lord's Prayer, but first, for those of you that are new, we join hands virtually here, since we can't all be together. And after a moment of silence for the alcoholic who still suffers in and out of these rooms, we'll say the Lord's Prayer together. Here's your moment. Okay, thank you. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Keep coming back. It works. It really, really does.
Everybody.
It really does. It really does.
Thanks, everybody.
Good meeting.
Thanks,
Good
folks.
to
Thank you.
see
Great meeting.
everybody here.
Bye, guys.